For our project, we explored Norton, which is located on North Campus between Capen and Knox. Norton is one of the smaller buildings located on campus.
The history of the ADA. The ADA is a mandate for equality. Any person who's discriminated against by an employer because of a real disability or because the employer regards the person as being disabled, whether they are or not, should be entitled to the law's protection. The focus of the act was and should be on eliminating employers' practices that make people unnecessarily different, says Professor Robert Bergdorf Jr., one of the drafters of the original bill that became the ADA. On July 26, 1990, President George H.W. Bush officially signed the Americans with Disability Act into law. This law, enacted by Congress, officially stated a clear and comprehensive prohibition of discrimination on the basis of disability. Under this law, people with disabilities were protected from discrimination in the workplace, public entities, public accommodations, telecommunications, and other miscellaneous provisions that people with disabilities may be discriminated under. Although the official act was not put into place until the early 1990s, prior to that, there was much effort to fight for the rights of people with disabilities around the country. Without these efforts of people banding together in order to get protection for people who in many cases could not protect themselves, it was very crucial to this movement today. Every day, thousands of students walk through doors to get to buildings and classrooms, not ever second-guessing the process. The process of opening the door may be simple to some, but for others, it can be a very daunting and stressful everyday task. This is something I realized when having to go through Norton Hall in a wheelchair for the first time. When first entering in Norton Hall through the main entrance, there is no ramp for people in wheelchairs. Although there is no ramp available, it is also not necessary since the entrance is not at ground level. The doorknobs on all the main doors were 3 feet from the ground, so people in wheelchairs were able to reach them, but there were no handicap buttons to help assist people in a wheelchair. There were also no handrails to help assist people in wheelchairs so they could reach them. These are all essential items in order to be able to open and get inside buildings with ease.
As I was researching about the handicap services in our school, I came upon an article that was pretty interesting. Students in wheelchair are talking about their experience. What really intrigued me was that the disability service in Norton does not have a disability button to open a door. This building was supposed to help out students with disability, but going into the room itself is difficult. I think that this is a more in-depth article because they are actual students with disability. Students with other disability explain their experience in school. This actually happened not too long ago. In May of 2000, University of Buffalo was sued by 3 students for violation of the American Disability Act, Section 504, for the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. Because UB is a public institution that receives federal funding, it must be fully compliant with ADA code and Milia, who has cerebral palsy, said that there is only one dorm room that is remotely ADA accessible. The only bathroom that she could use is the one in the back dorm. The bathroom on campus was not ADA compliant. For someone like Milio, who was in a power wheelchair, could not use them because they were not deep enough. If she could get into the bathroom, she had to leave the door open. It was very embarrassing, but those were the best of the bathrooms. Most of them she couldn't even enter.
I know. There's no button.
I feel like this took a lot less time than I expected.
Woo! Getting around in the physical world is something that many of us take for granted. Picture yourself late for class, unable to run or run up the stairs to make it to your first class on time. Imagine being so frustrated and watching everybody else around you run past you to catch the elevator and you not being able to do that. In Norton Hall, The elevators are built so small that one person in a wheelchair can pretty much occupy most of the space, leaving small room for others to come in. When getting into the elevator, someone has to hold the door for you so that the door does not abruptly close in on you. People in a wheelchair will be affected greatly if elevators in Norton Hall breaks down. They will not be able to go to class or mobilize effectively to other places because a few stairs can be a large barrier for someone in a wheelchair. In one article, a 10-year-old boy named John Hodson, a wheelchair-bound student, couldn't attend Tilton Intermediate School, which is just up the street from his home, all because of the lack of elevators in the school. So instead, John found himself taking a bus miles away from his home and his friends and his neighborhood. It is obvious that any child with a broken leg will have trouble moving around in the building. Something needs to be done, either installing elevators in the many schools that does not have it, or making sure small elevators like those that we have in Norton Hall will be built a little bigger.
Well, you are better than us.
Yeah, she's really. Oh wow, that's like awkward. Like I just needed some extra time. Right? Are we going to the first?
This is one of the parking lot at UB. The handicap spot is 4 rows away from the ramp. It is extremely difficult for people in wheelchairs to go up the ramp, especially when it is snowing or raining. There is just one parking spot reserved for the handicap right by the ramp. The ramp itself is difficult to maneuver because of the rocks and grass. Beside the parking lot, there are parking spots in front of the buildings, which is a good thing. Only a few of them are reserved for handicaps though. The rest are for service vehicles.
As one can see, Abby got extremely frustrated when trying to get water from the drinking fountain in Norton. She was unable to reach, so she tried shimmying out of her wheelchair. However, if she had a severe disability, she would not be able to do this. Either way, it would be extremely frustrating for anyone who was wheelchair bound to get some water. The next time Abby wanted to get some water to drink, she went into a room where she knew she could get some water that was more accessible to her needs. At least in Norton, there was some place to go for Abby to get water. When a fire starts, the only way to alarm everyone in the building 24/7 is by having a working fire alarm. They are constantly scanning the air for smoke and fire. Statistics given by the National Fire Protection Association show that almost 2/3 of deaths from home fires result from homes without working smoke alarms. Although Norton is not a home and it is a school building, the chances increase significantly when it comes to surviving in a fire. Therefore, it is important for people with or without disabilities to be able to reach the fire alarm. Shown in this picture, Abby, who is in a wheelchair, is capable of reaching the fire alarm if she ever needs to lure her peers of a fire. Every day, millions of firefighters risk their lives not only to save others, but to save the people's property. Like I previously stated, it is important to have fire alarms accessible to the majority of the people, including those with disabilities. It not only alerts those who are in the building, but also sends help. It takes time for firefighters and fire departments to arrive on locations, so the sooner that someone can pull the fire alarm, the better it is. Remember, it's people's fathers, mothers, spouses, aunts, and uncles who are trying to help others out. No Child Left Behind is a step that the federal government took that requires schools to be accountable for the performance of students with disabilities. However, don't you think that students with disabilities could do better in their classes if it wasn't such a hassle to get to their classrooms or even to be able to get to their class at all?
Majority of the people in this room walk into the bathroom with the same routine. Enter in, pick your stall, wash and dry your hands, check yourself out in the mirror, and then leave to continue on with your day. But what if you couldn't reach the soap? How would you wash your hands? And what if you wanted to see what you looked like, but you were unable to because the mirror was too high? These are all things we take for granted every day. In fact, the most basic would be entering the bathroom alone. In Norton Hall, there is no handicap accessible button on for entering both bathrooms on the first and second levels of the building. This makes it nearly impossible for anyone in a wheelchair to enter without a need for assistance, and then when the door is finally open, there is such a tight angle that no wheelchair would ever be able to clear. If the person happened to maneuver the turn and enter the bathroom, they would be extremely disappointed to find out there is no handicap accessible stall inside. This violates the ADA regulation for a bathroom, which requires all facilities to have a handicap accessible stall at least 36 inches wide, equipped with parallel grab bars for leverage. The stall must also have an outward swing door in order to keep the clear floor space within the door for the person. When looking at the sinks, you can see the soap is set very high on the wall, completely out of reach for anyone in a wheelchair. With all these violations of the ADA requirements, I think it is safe to say Norton Hall does not have a handicap accessible bathroom.